Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Blessed be Yehovah, our King, creator of all things and everything. Yehodah is his name. We thank you, Father, for our lives, food, clothing, and shelter, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Today, as we do every Shabbat day, we continue with the series of, or the follow-up on the highlighting of the Torah by Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah, who reviews the previous week's portion of the Sidra or the parasha, and he highlights some points that might have been missing, or he might bring out some points of his own in the Sidra. So this week we will be reviewing Torah portion Wayeishev, which will begin in the book of Genesis chapter 37. And please, everyone, welcome Nasik Zurishaddai ben Yehudah. How are you, Nasik?
Okay, great. You might want to turn your volume up a little bit on your end, just a slight bit.
Okay, got you.
Okay. All right. First of all, let's get praise to the Supreme Eternal Universe, God, my forefathers, God, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Due respect to the dais that I'm on D.C.B channel, the spiritual leader of D.C.B, Chief Prince Yisrael, Ben Yasaska, hopefully a full Shalom, hopefully a speedy healing. And also to Chief Uzziel, who's working hard to try to promote these different programs and share with different people out there some insight about Torah. And also to the brothers and sisters, Prince, Chief Prince, and Kohanim, Maureen, throughout the whole house of Israel, I greet you in the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom. I know most people might see it as Shabbat, but we are pretty much a day ahead. Also, CHOKMAH for those that observing Hanukkah festival, festivities. First of all, I'd like to say, Adonai Septati Takupia Giti Atheaka, Lord, open my lips and my mouth should declare that praise. I'd like to also say that last time I spoke, we was dealing with the Sidra last week, where Yaakov just had a daughter that just had got raped by Shechem. Two sons, Simeon and Levi, had wind up destroying the men of Shechem. We know the rest of the sons spoiled Shechem and they left. And we know that after a while they had to get rid of the idols. We know also that Rachel had passed on in the Sidra, and they had the birth of Benjamin, which is the 12th son of Yaakov from last week, from the Sidra before. We also know that the Deborah, who was Yaakov's mother's nurse, she had passed on within that last.
Can you hear me better, Prince?
Oh yes, excellent.
Okay, great.
And we also have, in the concluding, in that particular Sidra, we have the death of Isaac, where Esau and Yaakov come together, and we know that they came together and they buried their father Isaac, at that particular time, where it was no discrepancy about the vengeance that Esau had harbored, years prior to Yaakov still in that blessing and going to Padam Aram. We also find about some of the chieftains and leadership of the Esau's line. And one of the interesting things is that though you read about the chiefs or the dukes, and sometimes it might be referred to as the chief of the dukes of Edom, they don't have a lineage of royalty where it's a direct, line of ascension. So it's like whoever might be, anybody might be the chief here, or somebody else might be a chief here. Now, some other books, just to share some insight, is that some other historians, they would say there's Edomites that's actually in charge, and then some other historians picking it up from other literature, more so like from the book of Joshua and other those sources, they would say that Edom couldn't trust themselves to be a leader because they wound up fighting each other, and they wind up choosing a wise individual, whoever that might be at the time, to replace the new leader. And so I don't know, how much validity to that. I'm just sharing some insights on those particular matters. So now we're going to begin in Wayeishev, when Yaakov began to dwell in the land. But one of the things I like to bring out in this particular Sidra is that we have a lot of things going on. We got Joseph's dreams, which caused jealousy amongst him and his brothers. Mm-hmm. We have Joseph is sold into captivity. We have the story of Yehudah, Judah, and Tamar. We have the story of Joseph rejecting part of his wife when she tried to molest him, so to speak, which is strange for a woman molesting a man, especially in ancient times. And then you have Joseph being thrown into prison, and then he interprets Pharaoh's two senior servants during the chief butler, or chief cupbearer, as some books might translate, and the chief baker. So that would be pretty much the story that we're covering it. Now, I'm just going to highlight some points in it because the story is pretty long. And so we're going to start off just from the beginning of Genesis. But one of the things I like to bring out also, I neglected to say from last week's Sidra too, we read that Yaakov had got his name changed from Yaakov to Yisrael, which is a point I overlooked last time. I meant to get to at the end, but I never got to it at the end. And one of the things is that we spoke basically about a name, being defining the person and have your spiritual connection. But I like to bring out also a point that the first act that man ever had that he was told to do was name the creatures. So naming is important. Not only it ties you to a spiritual thing and also define who you are, but it also is the first act that man actually performed in the earth when God had formed them of the dust of the ground. So we should be proud, those that have our names and try to live up to our names, and more so than live up to our names, develop the name, make the name famous, and not so much the name making you famous. So that's one of the things is, it shows character. So before man was even addressed the garden, he was told to name all the creatures that the Creator had brought before him. So now we're going to start at the 37th chapter of Genesis, Bereshit, and go on to and just gloss over a little bit.
We're in the book of Genesis, chapter 37, starting from verse 1.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren, being still a lad, even with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought evil report of them unto their father.
Okay. All right. Now, they give the age of Joseph. So, the oldest anybody else could have been older than him, which is Reuben. The most it could be is 7+, a little over 7 years older. Mm. So, everybody pretty much is teenagers at this particular time. All right, when they give Joseph age. And he's hanging out with the maid servants' children, the Zilpah's children, Dan, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. So he's with them, and he's not with Leah's children. And we know that Benjamin is not out there with him. So he's born at this particular time. So Benjamin is still pretty much at home. All right. So we could go just a little bit more on this here, and we're going to skip over.
Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. When his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Yosef,
Okay. All right. Now, after that, first of all, we know already that it shows favoritism. And when you show favoritism amongst children, one of the things, you try not to dress one child more better than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's apparently something to be seen. When we say, "Oh, this guy's dressed more lavish." Now, a coat, and the word, the coat says a coat of many colors. Katona pasim. Pasim itself is like stripes, similar to what I got on stripes. But of course, Joseph's coat was a lot more raw than what I got on now. But basically, it was stripes. And in that part of the world, we had a coat of many colors that was a sign of royalty and achievement. So because most people will have solid colors and not too many flashy colors. So if you had a coat of many colors, stripy coat, then it also which shows that it took a lot of work and you're special. And he's the only one that his father made that coat for. And so it's like almost like in them times around them circles, it's like knighthood almost. Say you're the one. And that creates a problem in a sense. Now, the word pasim, some rabbinic teachings show that the word pasim, which is pei, samek, yod, and mem, will represent Joseph's experience of his encounters. First, when you talk about the pasim, the pei representing part of which we're going to get to later on. I'm just going to skim through a lot of stuff, so I'm going to share this now. But the pei representing Potiphar, the yod representing Yishmael, the samek representing the Sokrim, which is the merchants, and then you got the mem representing Midian. So you got, so the word pasim, you find that all these was his encounters going into Egypt. The Ishmaelites and the Midianites, two merchants, and Potiphar from the letters pasim. So they tend to look at that those going to be some of the defining characters when he's actually sold into a situation. All right, so right then, and it says, pick it up from there when you left off that up.
Verse 5. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto them, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and also stood upright. And behold, your sheaves came down about, and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brethren said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? They hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream.
All right. I'm just going to fast forward this just a little bit. All right. One, we noticed that the brothers seen that the fathers love Joseph. So I'm going to bring out some things about misdirected hatred, misdirected animosity. Because one of the things I always say about Genesis, we got all the social structure of all kind of family intrigues within the book of Genesis, dealing with the patriots on through. And one of the things is that when a child see that you actually love, you could tell a person that I love you all. But then it's like when I can see it, then that means, people say, well, if you love me, show me. So they actually seen the love that's being pushed over to Joseph more so. I mean, giving him a coat was one thing. They might say, okay, I'll look past that. But then the affection that I could see from there, that's another thing. And so it creates more, and it said they hate him. They hate him because of love. It seems like they should be talking to their father about what's wrong with us? Why you love Joseph more? And, so some people just don't bring out directly their problems to the source. There's bring it to the other source, somebody else, directed from this place else, other than bringing it to the source where it's coming from.
Right.
All right. So, and they talk about the dreams now. We know we had several dreams. We're gonna jump down to the dream about the sun. I have a dream yet, a dream, and behold, the sun and the moon, the 11 stars bowed to me. And he told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said unto him, what is this dream that thou hast dreamt? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down to thee in the earth? And all his brethren envied him, but his father kept the saying in mind. We're gonna stop right there for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And Joseph had a total of 3 dreams. The first dream he had, we don't know what that was. They didn't like it either. Whatever he told them, they didn't like it.
Right.
For that first dream. The second dream that he actually had was a dream of the wheat, the sheaves. And the third dream that he had is the one I just read in reference to the sun, the moon, the stars.
Right.
All right. Now, we know there's a lot of different various interpretations in reference to these particular dreams. We know in both dreams, Joseph is the man. And we know in both dreams that the brothers interpreted in Joseph's favor, ain't if they didn't like it. He just told them that, but he didn't have to interpret it. And one of the things that would make Moshe Rabbeinu so great is that the Creator didn't come to him in a vision and didn't come to him in a dream. When you have visions, and a lot of times when the prophets have a vision,
right,
you have a clearer message. When you have a dream, it bears, you have to bring about some kind of interpretation, but it's not 100% in a dream. So now, just going a little bit ahead of the story, the 2 dreams that we do have a definition on, one about the wheat and one about the stars.
Right.
We know that when it comes down to the wheat, that it said that Joseph's brothers bowed down to his sheep, to his wheat.
Right.
When it comes down to the stars, the sun, the moon, the stars, it said they bowed down to me. So that's so there's a difference. Your sheep bowed down to my sheep, and then when it gets to the sun, the moon, and the stars, it's no longer bound down to something that I have, but it's directly to me. So that's real would intensify. He said, this youngin over here coming out like that. This youngin over here think he's all that.
Dreamer of dreams.
And they call him the Baal Kalamot. You know what I mean? Right. The master of dreams, because
right,
no one else having those dreams. And Yaakov kept the saying in mind, but we know his mother's dead. The mother's dead. No one know when it's going to take place. No one know how it's going to take place, and we never read where Yaakov ever bowed down to his son. So much for the dreams.
right.
Now we know that when the brothers first go down, I'm going a little ahead of the story now, because I'm just going to focus on these dreams and then focus on another aspect of this particular Sidra, is that when the brothers go down, they go down because of wheat.
Mm-hmm.
But when they come down the second time, they are coming down as VIPs. Eventually, they're elevated to the level of VIPs when their father Yaakov is there. So the first time they come down because of hunger, and naturally they bow to Joseph because he's the man that's selling the wheat. But now, later on, only the brothers will bow to Joseph because of his status.
Right.
You know what I mean? But they coming down there as VIP, on a higher level. So you ain't coming down as the local people.
Right.
So that's another interpretation, another point that could be taken from the two dreams.
Right.
Because the last time when they show up, I mean, when they go down there with their father, it's not about the food. It's about Joseph and family. So we're going to skip on that over there. And we know that he was actually, sent out, when the brothers, he brought out a bad report, about his brothers. We don't know what the report was, the bad report that he brought out concerning his brothers.
Right.
But there's always a bunch of commentaries in reference to sometimes you see things, but you don't see it clearly. You misconstrue what you see. And I will come back to that in a moment. But Yaakov loved them not because of the bad report he brought, but simply because he was the son of his old age. And you say, well, why is he the son of his old age? Why not Benjamin when Benjamin's much younger? And Yaakov's a lot older. But when we look at the difference, he worked all that time in Padamaram for Raquel. He never, ever was intending on working for Leah.
Right.
And it's after Joseph was born, he was ready to go, but he lingered for the cattle.
Right.
So that was his main mission, his main goal. So now I'd like to also bring out some other points in reference to Joseph and Yaakov had a lot of things that coincide with their life, so to speak. Will make them more favorable in the sense of what happens and takes place in their life. As we get ready to know, Esau and Yaakov had a brother that hated him at one point.
Right.
Joseph is hated by his brothers.
Right.
We know that Yaakov's mother was barren at one point. We know that Joseph's mother was barren at one point. We know that Yaakov's mother had a hard childbearing. We know that Joseph's mother, not with him, but with his brother, had a hard childbearing where it cost her life. We know that Yaakov had dreams.
Right.
Joseph is the only one we read about that had dreams. We know that Yaakov had to separate from his family, and we know that Joseph had to separate from his family. So we have a lot of similarities between those two. Yaakov going for about 20 years plus, Joseph going for 22 years. So it's a lot of, things that they can relate to one another and their life story. And I'm throwing it out there now because when we get to the last portion of the Sidra, why he and he lived, it explains more why, what he actually lived for. Now, Joseph ended up leaving at 17, years old. But he went anyway. The brothers feeding the flock, and we out there in Shechem, in a place where they basically had just slayed some people. And the father was send Joseph to go, check on the welfare of the brothers. We know
Right.
that when they see he wasn't at the place where he was, so he was going by near Hebron. Hebron is where Abraham, the patriarch, is buried, at that particular time.
Right.
Also, right near the valley where Abraham had the epiphanies that his children will be in a land for 400 years.
Okay.
So he passed all this area here, going to the brothers. We know right then and there that from the story that he was actually, they wanted to kill him. Reuben tried to save him from being killed. But the interesting thing is this, Reuben didn't say, don't shed his blood. He said, don't shed blood. So that was like a universal premise. We can't just murder, but here we're talking to people that just wiped out two of the brothers that just wiped out a whole city. And then you get all of them conspiring to kill him.
Right.
And all because of a dream. And so now we know the story that he wound up being, sold and, put in a pit. Then later on, Yehudah come up with the plan to sell him. Said, look here, we ain't get no profit out of this. We ain't gonna kill him. But it's slavery in them days, you never know what's going to happen with a guy that's sold into slavery.
Right.
And they seen some Ishmaelites and Midianites. Now, what is interesting is that these are family members.
Right.
And they was going down to Egypt. And not only was going to Egypt, normally they might, they had some of the, what they was carrying was bombs and spices. So now he's in a caravan, not just with a bunch of slaves and a bunch of funky animals, but even though he's going into a servitude with Ishmaelites, and Midianites, that he's traveling in what you call a caravan where the aroma is smelling good. It's not funky. You can tolerate that with bombs and spices. So the creator has a strange way of working on some things. All right. So we're gonna skip on just a little bit because I'm not. I know it's a long story, but we know also one thing I like to bring out. Well, I bring this out at the end, if I don't forget, in reference to they snatched the coat off on him. Right. And when they snatched the coat off, when they threw him in the pit, that's the first thing they looked at. Stripped him. All right. Matter of fact, I gotta bring it out now, so to speak.
What verse?
No, I'm just gonna speak on it. I'm gonna speak on it. We're not gonna read that because the Sidra is kind of long, and I'm trying not to be too long. Gotcha. All right. So one of the things that when they before they threw him in the pit, they had snatched his coat off. What is unique in this story about Yosef, and what is some very things that we must notice is that Yosef is spoken about more as a character than anybody else other than Moshe that we could read about in the scriptures. It's more about his life in the book, and we know more about his life story than we know of anybody else other than Moshe, pretty much. I think David might run close up in there, as a third or something like that, but his life story read more than anybody else. The story, the life story of Yosef. Right. And the coat that was taken off him, as we know, I'm going a little bit ahead, and he loses a coat. He's stripped of the coat. As we're going to get down to later on with the wife, he loses his clothes again. But then he's invested with clothes when he stands before Pharaoh. So and that's something to consider. Dreams going to get him in trouble. And just like Jacob, he had dreams that also was made let him get a fortune. Right. Joseph going to interpret dreams, and the dreams going to cause him to get a fortune. So there's a lot of similarities between it. All right, so we're going to pick it up from. Let me see. I want to pick it up from after they sold them. All right, after they sold them, we're going to pick it up at the 38th chapter, just a little bit. In the 38th chapter. Yes.
Chapter 38 of Genesis. Right. Chapter 38, verse 1. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. And Yehudah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bore a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bore a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again bore a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Kezib when she bore him. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of Yehoah, and Yehoah slew him.
All right, we're going to stop right there just for a minute. All right. All right. Now, it's always it's always it's some commentaries in reference to who Tamar actually was. You know, being unique, you know, unique individual. You know, some say she might have been one of the, you know, or offshoot of Shem. She might have been Shemitic, but just happened to be dwelling in Canaan at the time. You know, that's the controversy in that area. But Judah himself had married a Canaanite. That's what he definitely did, marry a Canaanite. And you say, well, if Yaakov wasn't supposed to marry the daughters of the land, what these other people doing marrying the daughters of the land? And when you check the genealogy later on, you find that not only Judah, other people had daughters of the land. So you say, well, Isaac, Yaakov, you know, and none of the patriarchs had the daughters on the land or from the land of Canaan. But yet, right, some of the people of our, you know, the patriarchs of the tribes, some of them had daughters of the land. And he said, wow, you kind of wonder about that. You know, when you still had, you know, they could have married Edomites if they wanted. They could have married Ishmaelites if they could wanted. They could have married some Midianites if they wanted. But some of them had actually Canaanite wives, in, you know, within their mix. Even though we know it's a patriarchal genealogy where you go, you know, what your father is. It's just that it's something to be, you know, thinking about in reference to they married daughters of the land when the actual patriarchs that their fathers never had to marry somebody from their side of the family.
Right.
And Judah himself, you know, I mean, had 3 sons, and he said one son, you know, did evil. Now, most children are more influenced by their mother than by their sons in the early stage. You know, and usually they tend to know more of the mother's family in these days and times, where in ancient times, the mother would be part of the father's family. So they,
right.
You know, but today, these days, it's just switcheroo. Most of the kids know their grandmothers, their great-grandmothers and stuff like that, and uncles and cousins and stuff, more so from their mother's side than they know from their father's side. You know, which is normally ain't the way it should be. And you know, you should know a lot from where your father's from, and that side of the family. But he had these 3 sons, and one of them was evil. Then the next thing you know, his next son was told to go into his Onan. Onan itself, his name. You can look into the meanings of some of these names too. I'm not going to be labeled the meaning of the names at this time, but Onan was told to go in and perform, you know, the duty of a husband, brother, to Tamar, and raise up seed to that brother. And he didn't have a problem laying with the woman, but he had a problem raising up seed to that brother. And then it said, and you know, and after that it said, and the Lord slew him also. Now, when we look at the Lord slew him also, what is what we find that's unique about that is that when you raise up seed, it's not just saying the child gonna be named after your brother that died. It means that he inherits what your brother's portion would have been. So a lot of times people would figure, well, so he don't like the woman. Maybe she talked too much and all that. It's not about that. If you don't do that, what you actually showing is a greed that you want more territory, more of your father's possession. You want more of a physical inheritance. You know, because if there's no child, male or female, through that woman, she couldn't inherit the property after she died. She lived there, but after she died, it would stay within divided amongst whatever sons is left. So the sons would be 2 sons. So he'd have a bigger portion. He had 50% instead of 33 1/3%. You know, and would have to have more than that. So that means that will wind up with 50%, and him and Shelah will have 25%. If we talk about the firstborn, get a double portion.
Right.
So 50% to 25%. Now if you have another child, you know what I mean? So you talk about 33% to 30%.
Right.
Because that child, in the name of his brother, he'll get property, but he's no longer the actual firstborn no more.
Right.
You know, so it's more serious than what sometimes we look at. We just blame it on the woman that she might look bad, or she might be ugly, or she might be a gadabite, or whatever the case is. So, they say, well, don't want her. I'd rather, but when we read the book of Ruth, the guy that remained unnamed in the book of Ruth was said that he couldn't mar his inheritance if he took the Moabites.
Mm.
He didn't mind the property. He didn't want her with it.
Mm.
So those are some of the things to bring on. But I'm just going to read a little bit from the 11th verse.
Verse 11.
Yeah, verse 11. Yeah, 38:11.
Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in thy father's house till Salah my son be grown up. For he said, lest he also die like his brethren. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in process of time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite.
Okay, all right. One of the things I just want, you said your wife died and then you was comforted. You wonder what kind of relationship he had. Because we read just previously, I didn't speak on it this particular time, but I'm saying we read previously and following Sidra that Yaakov refused to be comforted for the loss of his son Joseph. And yet Yehudah, after Joseph is sold, he separates from his brethren and he got his own little thing going on now. He got whole new companionship, whole new crew he rolling with, after the separation of Joseph. So we don't just have Joseph being separated from the brothers at this particular time when he's sold into slavery. Yehudah, who's not sold into slavery, become enslaved to his passions. And these are two major tribes that because later on when the kingdom split, the tribe of Joseph under Ephraim mostly took 10 tribes, and Yehudah was left with Benjamin, in the southern kingdom. All right, we're just gonna move on a little bit. I'm not going to belabor that. I'm just going to highlight and just talk about it. So we know that after Yehudah, he didn't give up Tamar. That Tamar found out that Shelah was grown. And usually when a woman having children, having husbands that's dying, you say, "Wow, should we take a chance of giving my next son to her? I done lost 2 sons. I only got 3. I done lost 2." And then the 2, it said the Lord kill her. So now it's not her, because the book said the Lord kill her. So that means that she got to be more righteous than the guys that's dealing with her, because she's still living.
Right.
And they're dead.
Right.
But he's not looking at it like she's more righteous than them. He's looking at, she killing my sons off. He got one more left. And it said, and I don't know how he gonna act. What kind of influence how you gonna act? So I'm gonna wait till he be grown. And then he didn't. She found out that he was grown, and he didn't perform his thing. Kept his word, so to speak. We know that she dressed up as a harlot, Kadesha with a veil,
right,
and caught him in a trap, so to speak, because of his own lust, and he wound up giving up, a signet and a staff, and and his cord, as collateral for a lamb, just to lay with him.
Right.
So as you can see where the story's going, showing two brothers separate, Yehudah and Yosef, and they both have a situation where it could be lust, or if it ain't, lust could be involved in one end, or virtue. So either you're gonna have lust and fornication, or you're gonna have virtue.
Right.
So Yehudah right now is going to be caught in a lustful situation, and the virtue going to be on the woman's side, so to speak. Where in Joseph's case, when we get to it in just a little bit, it's just going to be the reverse. So now, when we look at Yehudah, he lays with her, get her pregnant, and then she go back where she going, go back home, and they get word that your daughter Tamar is conceived. She's with child, and the first thing he said, well, let her be brought out and burnt. But we know he tried to pay her with the lamb, but he sent it back. Guilt sometimes is a funny thing. He said he's gonna send it by a friend, and then not only gonna send the lamb back by the friend to pay off this harlot for his particular act. We know that the people say there's no Kadesha here, no harlot here, and we know also at this particular time that Yehudah said, well, we got to be able to pay her because we'll be shamed. But Yehudah dealt with the act, said we'll be shamed. But it's his act. So now he acting like a judge and a prosecutor when he said he heard that she was pregnant, said let her be brought out and burned.
Right.
And what I like about the story is that, in a nutshell, is that Yehudah was about to have her executed, and she sent the belongings of Yehudah. She didn't bring them; she sent them. As we look at the story carefully, and whoever the messenger was, she said, "Tell her by the owner of these, am I with child?" And that's unique. She showed a certain type of modesty, even though she went and did what she went to do. She showed modesty because while she's going to be executed, she has somebody that she can confide in and say, just take this to my father-in-law and show him this and tell him that by the man who these belong am I with child, without calling his name. And Yehudah himself said she was more righteous than I was.
Right.
Because he could have said, somebody snatched that. Somebody stole that. I don't know how it's missing. He acknowledged his wrong. So though he felt so low, and I bring that out because a lot of people just focus on his lust and everything like that. But whereas he was willing to kill his brother, and then he said, look, we can make some money off of this. When it came to his own integrity, he said, look, I'm going to admit that I was wrong and she was more righteous than I was. And therefore, by him admitting that, he saved her life. And then she had two children. And the Creator blessed them in the sense that the two sons he lost, he wound up with two sons. Zerah and Pharez. So we're going to go into the next chapter a little bit, the 39.
Chapter 39.
Yes.
And it reads, verse 1, and Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hand of the Ishmaelites that had brought him down thither. And Yehoah was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that Yehoah was with him, and that Yehoah made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found favor in his sight, and he ministered unto him, and he appointed him overseer over his house, and all that he had, he put into his hand. And it,
Okay.
and it came to pass from the time that he appointed him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that Yehovah blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yehovah was upon all that he had in the house and in the field.
Okay, hold right there. Now, I just want to stop there for just a moment. The creators were Joseph. The officer, the master, could see the creators with Joseph. And you say, how could you really see that God's with this individual? You know, because Joseph is supposed to be a worker, and he don't have the skills as a lad. He don't have the skills to be able to be that prosperous in everything he touched. Because when you're a servant, they say, oh, I'll put you over here, I'll put you over there. But whatever you do is working out, you know, and I'm gaining a profit from it. And the irony is that we're going to see this played out several times where other people see the creators with Joseph and Joseph don't see it. That's what's paramount. Sometimes people can see you being a blessing to them, and you can't see you are a blessing to them or to yourself.
Right.
You know, and this is the case with Joseph at the time. So we're gonna skip on down just a little bit. All right, and we find out that Joseph was a handsome guy. So the seventh verse.
Seventh verse.
Yes.
And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master having me knoweth not what is in his house, and he hath put all that he have into my hand. He is not greater in this house than I, neither have he kept anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?
All right there. Now, you notice he didn't say sin against man. He said, this is bigger than the man. This is a universal premise that I shouldn't take another man's wife.
Right.
All right. And this is a godly thing. You know, he recognized that marriage is supposed to be sacred.
Yes, sir.
And if marriage is sacred and the Creator performed the first marriage union, and it's sacred. And so therefore, Joseph kept that integrity intact. Even Yehudah knew marriage is supposed to be sacred. So, you know, in that sense, that's why he tried to keep Tamar on the side. All right. But here it is that she approached him where Yehudah approached Tamar. You know, which is a difference. So, and it showed a parallel of the story. Now, both of them got separated from their brothers for a while. Why Yehudah left, there's a whole lot of commentaries why Yehudah left after the sale of Joseph. Yeah, you know, his father acting all, you know, I mean, it's all, you know, he refused to be comforted and everything like that there. You know, nobody could say, come on, Pops, man, you know, let's snap out of it. You know, that kind of pain and anxiety, you know, he just stepped away because it was his final idea that got Joseph sold off in the first place. You know, so sometimes you got to run. You know, sometimes guys run away from their, you know, their problems and run away from their sin, but it still haunt them. So Yehudah had a conscience to the degree. So it's a lot of psychological things we could develop in a story, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on. And we find out then that Joseph refused her. So after the process of time, what happened?
And it came to pass as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. And it came to pass on a certain day when he went into the house to do his work, and there was none of the men of the house there within, that she caught him by his garment and saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And it came to pass.
All right. So we know right then and there, she after that, she lied on him. All right. You know, she had snatched his garment from him. and lied, because they, try to force her to lay with him. Now, there's a lot of stuff on that too, but for another time, to be spoken on. But I like to just bring out this other point that when we get down to 19th verse in the same chapter.
19th verse.
Yes, same chapter.
It reads, "And it came to pass when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, the place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in the prison."
Oh, right there. Now, we know that would be a death penalty if he really believed it.
Right.
If you really believe this story, and he's a servant, why not kill him?
Right.
On an attempted rape.
Right.
In the city. That we
Right.
have a law like that.
Right.
If a woman cry out, then the man is put to death. And he's a slave, a foreigner in a strange land. And he's accused of a situation like that. And she presumably has some sort of evidence. And, one of the commentaries they say in reference to this is that he was going to kill him. That's a commentary. He would have killed him, but the story didn't show true real well in the sense that which way his garment was ripped. If it was ripped from the front or ripped from the back. If it's ripped, from the front, that means right then and there that he's willing. If it's ripped from the back, he was trying to get away.
Right.
so trying to run and just snatched it off. So therefore, the saved face as an officer of Pharaoh and save his wife face.
Right.
He said, I'm gonna put him in prison. I ain't gonna kill him. But I just can't let it be known that my wife is a floozy.
Loose. Right.
She's a floozy like that. And so I'm just gonna put him in prison. Right. But the thing is, back then, you didn't get no 3.5 to 7, no 7.5 to 15. When they put you in prison in the ancient time, you there till somebody think about you or want you. So it's never a thing where like you go to jail today and they say, well, you got 3.5 to 7 years, you got 7.5 to 15, or you got 20 to life and all that. Nah. When they think about you next time, that's the next time you're gonna get up out of there.
Right.
So you basically gonna be serving a life sentence on any kind of crime.
Right.
You're going to prison. But as we look further now, we know already. We're gonna skip down to the 21st. Matter of fact, we're going to go 21st
Verse 21.
Verse. Yes.
But Yehovah was with Joseph and showed kindness unto him and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. And the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because Yehovah was with him. And that which he did, Yehovah made it to prosper.
Ain't that something? He still don't see God working with him. Still don't see that. It's always somebody else recognizing the Creator working through Joseph. But yet Joseph can't see the Creator working through him. And that goes all the way through. And how we know that Joseph can't see that? Because we're going to the 40th chapter, and I'm going to try to breeze through this kind of quick. So the 40th chapter, which ends, this
reads, "And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against his 2 officers, and against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. Right. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, and to the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph to be with them. And he ministered unto them, and they continued a season inward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream. And one night each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were bound in the prison.
Okay.
And Joseph came in unto them in the morning and saw them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him and in the ward of his master's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sad today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it.
Hold
And
right
Joseph,
there. All right, I'm gonna stop right there. I'm gonna hold that point though. All right. Who look happy in prison? I'd like to know. Who look happy in prison? You know, when you're subject to be there forever.
right,
And yet he said, you know, he's in prison. He don't want to be there. And yet they looking sad. That's not the first sad face he's seen, in prison.
Right.
So he said, why are you looking so sad today? It's obvious you've been sad all the time when you got here. You've been looking bad all the time when you got here. But today, some just tend to be a little bit more, extra.
right,
And can you imagine? One of the lessons we could learn from this is that in the midst of your own problems, can you recognize somebody have problems even greater than yours? And this was, sometimes when we have a problem, when things going rough with us, when we have things life give us a downward turn, we can't see that somebody right next to us, near us, have a problem far worse than ours. And yet Joseph, in prison, he's not a free man. And other prisoners in there, and these guys are in there. And he took time to say, look, whatever's going on, I know y'all in the worse shape than me right now. And so I'm concerned about you. Not that I forgot about me, but I'm more concerned about your situation. How many people could be in a bad situation and be more concerned about somebody else in a worse situation?
right.
And that's some of the virtues and lessons we can learn from this here story here. This is about one of the defining moments of Joseph right here in this particular story.
Right.
All right, just gonna go a little bit more on this here.
It reads, And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell it me, I pray you.
Okay.
And the chief butler.
All right, I'm gonna stop right there. All right. Now he finally, before he tells his brothers the dream, and the brothers give the interpretation. That's how it was working out, and that's what got him in some trouble.
Right.
Now he's saying, look here, interpretation of dreams belong to God.
Right.
But yeah, I'm gonna tell you some stuff. But he now attributing any interpretation to the Creator. Why he attribute the interpretation that his brothers got to the Creator? See, so sometimes when we talk about ego, self-centered, Joseph had to go through a development, because before he never can attribute anything about the brothers interpreting dreams. I had this dream. All right, I'm gonna tell you the dream. Why you gotta tell me? Why you want us to know it? All right, so you got some idea what that dream supposed to mean?
Right.
And I want y'all to figure out and tell me about me.
Right.
So that would be more of an egotistical type thing, edging God out, So in the two dreams, all the dreams he had, now this the first one that somebody else have a dream, and he said, "Look, this interpretation belongs to the Creator, not to me." And in actuality, this is the first time anybody attribute interpretation of dreams belong to the Creator, was Joseph. Yaakov had, he seen a dream, he was told certain things going on, on one of his dreams he had. And Laban was told what to do in his dream. So no interpretation. Right?
Right.
Abimelech was told what to do in his dream and need no interpretation. But now dreams need an interpretation. And in the ancient world, people attributed dreams to a divine source. Today, when you tell a person about your dream, they say, well, I need to tell you something about yourself. Not a divine source, but I'm telling you something about you in that dream.
Right.
So that's the way people approach dreams today. But before this time, this is the first time you read where it says interpretation belong to God concerning the dreams. All right, but let's go a little bit further here.
It reads, verse 9, and the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, in my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and as it was budding, it blossomed shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes.
Uh-huh.
Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand.
Uh-huh.
And Joseph said unto him, this is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within yet 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head and restore thee unto thy office, and thou shalt give Pharaoh's cup into his hand after the former manner when thou wast his butler.
Okay.
Verse 14. But have me in thy remembrance when it shall be well with thee. Show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen.
Go ahead. For indeed.
Verse 15. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon.
Hold right there. Now, he said I was stolen. Because that's what he realized. He said, my brothers couldn't have been trying to sell me to nobody. They couldn't try to get rid of me like that. How they gonna go home like that? What they gonna tell my father about me? So, far as I understand, some dudes pulled me out, tied me up, and brought me down here to Egypt. And he called it. That's the first time you also read where it said the land of the Hebrews.
Right.
So the thing is that to Joseph's mind, my brothers didn't sell me. They couldn't do such a thing. They was upset with me for a minute. You know what I mean? And they gonna rough me up, but they can't go home without bringing me back.
Right.
Now all of a sudden, I only did a season, so that means I only was in Potiphar house one season. That means just enough for you say a season like a spring, summer,
right.
fall like that. And then next thing you're in jail. You're in jail. Right. And when you do the math later on, you figure, basically, close to a year and the master's house, and then the rest of the time, hard time in jail.
Right.
So he said, not only that, I'm innocent for what I'm here for. So by he saying Pharaoh going to restore him, he actually saying, the butler, you're innocent for what you got put in here for.
Right.
You're not so you're supposed to be here. So he lay his innocent on as well. I need to get out of here too because you coming out because you're not responsible for what evidently the dream showing you that you wasn't responsible for Pharaoh, you putting you in here. But then we know that the baker, on the other hand, was responsible. But we're gonna, we know the story how it ends. I'm gonna stop pretty much here. We know how the story ends here. That the baker seen that the dream was good and good interpretation, and he brought his dream out. And Joseph told him in 3 days you're gonna be hanged. So and sure enough, it was Pharaoh's birthday. First time you read about a birthday in the book, and the butler's restored, and the baker's killed or slain, but the butler didn't remember Joseph. Why? Because everybody seen God with them. Potiphar seen God with them. The warden seen God with Joseph. And also Joseph said interpretation belonged to God, but yet he depended on a man instead of depending on the Creator. So therefore he wound up being there 2 more years. So, and sometime in our lowest depths, we got to keep hope alive, and depend on if you got to reach up to touch the bottom of your foot, you got to remember that the Creator, can deliver you, if it's His will, out of all your conditions. And also, any mistakes I made, be my own. But I like to share some things about Hanukkah coming into the 8th day, which is last day of Hanukkah, in reference to that the season. And I like to bring it out there that yourself and Chief Abdiel did an excellent job on a Hanukkah breakdown, that you did, and a lot of people get a lot of insights in reference to the Hanukkah breakdown. And one of the things I just like to share in reference to Abdiel gave a breakdown of the Maccabees' name, Mika, Mocha, Baalim, Elanai, who is like God among the gods, so amongst the mighty. So, and though the name means a hammer, but one of the things I like to share is about, they always talk about the oil, and I say you only find, and I'm glad to put it out that it's only from rabbinic or Talmudic literature, Shabbat 21, when it's basically talking about the lighting of the oil itself in Shabbat, and the Talmudic part. So it's talking about, lighting up the oil and what the priest is supposed to do. And in most synagogues, they read the dedication of the temple for each day. The dedication of Mishkan, rather. The dedication of Mishkan in the wilderness, each day in most prayer books, for those that follow that particular protocol.
Right.
But one of the things I like to bring up is a game, a toy they play with. And most people see, they call it dreidel, which is a Yiddish word which means spinning top. All right. We don't find that used in there, but there's a story behind it. And one of the stories that's behind the dreidel is that it's a little top that spins upside down. You do it with your fingers, and they play little games with it. And they say that when they was prohibited from studying Torah and teaching Torah in the caves, that people would come on, that the Greeks, the Greek armies would come on out and catch them in the caves and look and see what they're doing in there. And they figured they'd keep a Shabbat, but that the kids are playing a game, which was the dreidel. But on that particular dreidel, right, is that you have 4 sides with the letters Nun, Gimel, Shin, and Hey. In Israel, they make it, Nun, Nun, Shem, Gimel, and Hey. Well, I mean Pei rather. In Israel, they have it dreidel with those letters on there, because normally it would be a great miracle was done here, and done there. So, but the Nun itself will represent, and I like when just a follow up on what a Chief Abdiel spoke on about the different captivities. The different powers, empires, dealing with the 4 empires, dealing with the Babylonian Empire, the Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire.
Right.
So and they would, as one contemporary rabbi from the Middle Ages, and gave some insight and meaning to that particular letters. So where the Nun will represent a nefesh, the Gimel will represent goof, and the Shin or Sin, which is interchangeable, would be a Sakel, which was the intellect, and then the Hey, Hakol. And they'll say, how would the Nun, which represent the Nefesh, will reflect Babylon. And Babylon itself was the first one that we went into captivity with in 586 BCE. What they did, the Nefesh means the soul in Hebrew. How did Babylon destroy our soul? Is when they destroyed the temple. And one of the part of the things when we read in the book of Leviticus, if any soul brings an offering. So once the temple was destroyed, they related to our soul being destroyed. And the Babylonians wanted to destroy the temple. When it gets to the Persian Empire, you know, when they became in power under the Medo-Persian Empire, the Persians was going to, the word goof means a body. They want to destroy our body. How was that? You know, when you say the Persian posted on the Cyrus the Great, the Mede wanted us to go back to build the temple, what body did the Persians really try to destroy? As we get close to the Purim time, because one Edomite couldn't get one Israelite to bow before him, they planned to kill every Israelite throughout 127 provinces in one day. So that's a worldwide extermination of Israelites in one day. So that's the body, that's the goof. Now we into the period when we are observing the season of Hanukkah under the Greek, Syrian, and Hellenism. So when we look at the Hellenistic viewpoint, what do we see? We find that Hellenism itself, they had some, the Greeks had some of the greatest philosophers, and they figure logic was more important and supposed to have more facts than Torah had. So therefore, you had Israelites that said, look at upper crust Israelites, that I want to be part of the Hellenistic viewpoint. I want to use that. And even so much so that even amongst the Maccabees, the Hasmonean family themselves, they had, you know, Greek names. Hellenization was becoming real popular at the time. And it was a couple of years that they had already, basically there was a while since they destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, and the altar in Jerusalem, that's great altar in Jerusalem, before they got the Modine. So, and during that particular period, how did Hellenism affect us more is because you had Israelites with all different ideologies fighting against one another. So we had more of a civil war, even though we had the war over the battles of the Greek Syrians and the Antiochus IV. We had more internal war and fight amongst each other. You know, even when it comes down to Torah and logic, you know, philosophy as opposed to Torah laws. And then finally, the last letter, the He, Hakol. How we relate that to the Romans is because the Romans did all three.
Right.
The Romans adapted ideology from the Greeks. The Romans also destroyed the temple, and the Romans also destroyed our lives and scattered us to the four winds. So when you think about the dreidel and those four letters there, the Nun, the Shin or Sin, you know, for Sekel for the intellect, and then the Gimel, and then the Hey, we could think about more so than our battles and victories against the Greek Syrians that was in that particular area that tend to attack us, but also more so our own social divisions and fight internally within. Well, even today we're trying to fight against internally, you know, with more so mental jousting, I would say. So and then our jousting gets so strong that it's the book that's supposed to unite us tend to divide us because of our ideologies. So I just as we go into this 8th day, and we're in the month of Tibet, then we think about in a few days from now, a little bit more than a week and change. Yeah, the fast of Tibet, the 10th month, when the Babylonians actually laid siege to Jerusalem. So there's a lot of things that's going on. So we got to keep that in mind. So as we think about the menorah and the difference between the menorah that was in the temple or that was in the Mishkan was that the menorah in the Mishkan was used for us, for the priest or the Kohen, to see what he's doing in there, be able to function clearly. But the regular menorah that most people will put up is for you to look at and think about concerning. It's not a light to light your way. It's a light to see, you know, what you had really went through, which is a different perspective. So I hope that also help and give some people a little bit more dimension and thinking about the season that we're in for a dedication. And we know about the oil, like I said, you know, only in the Talmud you find about the oil lasting a long time, but you find oil being extended in the Book of Kings with Elijah, when the woman had some meal, flour, and oil, and it told the Creator caused it to rain, her oil would not cease. And then we read about in Elisha, Elijah's protege, that a woman was getting ready to have a son sold into a debt, into slavery, because they had owed a debt, and she filled up oils and all the pots in the oil till the oil was enough for her. So hence they come up in the Talmud about the 8 days of oil from the one barrel that was still, but which we don't find in the Apocrypha itself. So with that, I hope I shared some light. Any mistakes been my own?
Nasik, I have one question before you leave.
Yes.
Going back to the Sidra. This is a question that some people don't celebrate birthdays.
Okay.
Right? And what is your opinion on birthday celebrations? And what they use is actually Exodus chapter 40, verse 20, where it says that Pharaoh celebrated his birthday, and because the Tanakh tells us not to follow the ways of the heathens, that if we celebrate birthdays, we're basically following the way of Pharaoh, and they link it with witchcraft and a bunch of other things. What is your opinion on celebration of one's birthday?
We read about Pharaoh's birthday right here in the Sidra.
Right.
This is where we read about it. And when it was birthday, that's why the butlers left out of jail. So but
some people will say because it's Pharaoh, the only place you find in there is Pharaoh's birthday. You don't find anything else. That's a heathen custom. It's not a Hebraic or Israelite custom.
Right. Now, and it's not a prohibition, and that's number one. And when it says follow not the ways of the heathens, we the last nation on the planet and the least of all nations. And being the least of all nations, one of the things I spoke on, I was sharing with an elder and a brother, chief man, is that man was made from dust, and then God formed the dust of the ground and breathed the breath of life into him, and he became a living soul. All right, man is that dust. All the other creatures are made from soil, topsoil. Dust is a residue. It's not even the best, and yet the Creator brought the best. And we as Israelites was the least of all people. So, and David took a sword from Goliath and fought all his life long. And I'm sure the Goliath sword was known, embroidered with all kind of stuff. David had shields of other people that people he fought. So the keeping of the birthday, we're supposed to keep account. We're supposed to know how old a person is at 20, and know evaluation of a man. We're supposed to know also how when a person's supposed to retire if he's a Levite carrying stuff in the wilderness. So we also so if we kept records like that of time and dates, we should be satisfied and pleased to celebrate that the Creator gave us another day on the planet. Because we always, when you celebrate your birthday, you're saying, thank God I made it to this point. And if you just look at it as a coincidence or a passing whim, simply because somebody else beat you to it. And I'll give you another example. It was Cain that decided to bring an offering first. Abel came after him. So now, because Cain decided to do it and he was the first murderer, that we shouldn't do that again? Shouldn't bring an offering. you know, and he is the first one to bring an offering, first one to think about bringing something to God. And you read the book very carefully, and it said, then Abel, his brother, came. So the thing is, because somebody do it first, and you know, and it doesn't mean that it's not, you know, I mean, you know, because they did it first and they're not an Israelite, don't mean, you know, we're not supposed to do it. The first offering that we read about was Jethro bringing an offering, and Moses and the elders eating up that offering.
Right.
So birthdays, I would say, when you attribute to Pharaoh, and I think later on, I think Jehovah's Witnesses also attribute, I think, to Nebuchadnezzar or something like that. There's some kind of tale with Nebuchadnezzar. The thing, I would celebrate birthday. I'll definitely celebrate mine because I'm proud and thank God that I can make it to the point that I made it in, because I know that's not by my strength. So,
Hallelujah.
And if the Creator is merciful enough to allow me to reach, you know, a milestone in my year, then it's all well and good. Just like we remember the destruction of the temple, we keep calculation how long that is. We keep calculation how old any individual in the text is. When we talk about Joseph is 17 years old, we just read. So
and what age someone was weaned?
Yeah, Isaac was when he is, you know, 3. Pretty much he was weaned, pretty much right. 3, and that's an Eastern culture. So when we look at those things and numbers that's given in the book, when you count it, and we count a guy that's 20 years old, you know, and upward for war, then it's important, you know. So that, because somebody else celebrated first, I don't know, you know, it's like if the heathen do it first, and they don't serve this God, then we shouldn't do it. And that's so it's really, to me, that seems ludicrous, you know. Because I don't care if somebody did it first. Matter of fact, I can give you one more good example, one more even better example than that. The first one that says, and well, I always say the term Baruch Hashem, but it's the tetragrammaton. Bless the YAH.
Right.
All right. That was the unnamed servant that Abraham sent to get a wife from Isaac. All right. The second one to say that was a descendant of Abraham, which was Yithro. The third one to say it was the one that was hired to curse Israel, which was Bilam. So now, the first one, an unknown servant. We shouldn't use it? We shouldn't say Baruch Hashem or something like that? Bless the Creator. Bless the Eternal. So not being, because we ain't first to do this. So it's a lot of things that the book don't tell you to do, you know, and there's a lot of things that it don't tell you don't do. But the things that the Creator prohibits, he's very clear on. Because we say it's 613 laws, statutes, and judgments. So that means that you talk about 248 positive commands. That means those things you're supposed to do, and 365 negatives, more that you're not supposed to do. Birthdays are not part of that. And learning the ways of the heathens, when they talk about learning that, they're taking it out of context, because if they knew math before we do, then we're not supposed to deal with their math. You know, if they did building before we did, we're not supposed to deal with the building. Solomon had Hiram and Tyre cut down the timber in Lebanon.
And also in Egypt is where we came out of there with the ability to write on papyrus.
Right, exactly. It's a lot of stuff we learn. Right. You know what I mean? And you know what I mean? So the thing is that you know, I don't know why people, you know, that hop on birthdays. You know, because I don't see any kind of intellectual reason, because Pharaoh did it, that we shouldn't do it when it's not a violation of law.
Plus, there's a lot of books that are read that says birthdays is witchcraft. I mean, I don't know where these books come from. Where like birthdays is witchcraft. I don't know where this source comes from. You know, they said birthday cakes is birthday cakes is from witchcraft, right? The origins of birthday cakes. Now I read about the candles on the cakes being something about moon worship. All right, so but birthday cakes originate from Germany. They used to do birthday cakes for children, and the birthday cake wasn't what we identify as the birthday cake today. It was more like a bready, doughy type thing that they used to do to celebrate children's birthday. It started in Germany, but people associate everything to witchcraft.
Well, the witchcraft, the thing is, witchcraft use psalms.
Right,
They use Hebrew characters.
right,
All right. So the thing is that and witchcraft burn candles. So we're gonna use certain color candles because the witches use it.
right,
You know, we're not going to dress a certain way because they use it. So that those things there is a really I think it's really bizarre because one of the things is that everybody should be glad that the witches don't bring you into this world. It's a
Right.
creator that gives life.
hallelujah.
And the more you could thank the creator for giving you that life, the better off you are in your life. So when you reach a milestone, and if you didn't say 10, and by reason of strength 4 if you ain't keeping a record of time, how would you know it? And you should be able to celebrate that. And so I just figured if they don't want to celebrate it, they had to get rid of not only that, they got to get rid of a whole lot of stuff that's not in the book that heathens did first, and that's just discarded altogether. Just discarded altogether, and they'll lose out on a lot of stuff because the Creator didn't just give knowledge to Israel; He gave knowledge to all nations. Mm-hmm. So much so that Moshe could have said, "Look here, therefore God never talked to you. He talked to me. I don't need that advice about legislation."
Great point.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, reference.
Torah Nasik, thank
Okay.
you for the words. May the Most High God continue to be with you and bless you, and see you on the next time.
And tell my nephew Yom Ha'aledi.
Hallelujah. Right. Apropos for after this conversation.
Yeah.
Torah.
Okay, all right, shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
All right.